Welcome to the Expand Your Experiences podcast. I'm your host, Rashawn Stevenson. This is a show where I deconstruct experiences and how they help us develop into the best version of ourselves. I'll be facilitating conversations discussing the frameworks and experiences that help shape our lives. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Expand Your Experiences podcast. I'm your host, Rashawn Stevenson. If you're here for the first time, I want to take the time to welcome you. You're in for an absolute treat. Every single episode that I publish has been extremely intentional. I don't put out things just for the sake of it. I acknowledge the fact that there are so many things demanding your attention, time, and energy, and I'm grateful to have you here. Every single episode builds on each other. So if you haven't gone from episode 1 to 7, feel free to do so. The beautiful thing is that I don't have hundreds of episodes, so you can still catch up. Just so you can, have an idea and a full picture of the conversations that I like to have and get an idea of the work that I do in the world. And you can actually see the journey that I've taken just through the creation of the podcast. So I invite you at least to look through the titles and see if something stands out to you, and feel free to jump in right there and enjoy yourself. In the process of me creating the show, I learned that episode 7 is usually where people quit. For whatever reason, 7 is just a magic number where people actually just, either don't feel like they've had the traction, or they figure out it's too much work and they stop. I'm quite proud that that's not the case for me. Actually, I feel like episode 7 I feel like I'm now a lot more comfortable in creating these. I'm a lot more comfortable having the conversations, and actually very, very inspired at the fact that I have so many supporters and so much encouragement. I actually feel like this is just the beginning. So I want to thank everyone who has supported me throughout this process, all the people who have listened, who've listened week after week or every time I publish a podcast. And episode 7 is a big milestone. So you're actually in for a treat because I have a really, really special guest. But before I do that, there's one more thing I want to mention. I wanted to take the time to actually acknowledge the fact of how important balance is to me. So instead of looking at episode 7 as somewhere, a place that, I'd have difficulty or quit, I felt like it'd be a nice time to instead use that as motivation and add balance to the conversation. And that balance in which I'm referencing is having and share the experiences of a woman. How can one of my core principles be balance and not have women on the show? So I wanted to wait to episode 7. 7 is actually my favorite number. So I wanted to wait to episode 7 and actually have a guest on that I have the utmost respect for, not just as a woman, but as a human being. She's someone who inspires me. She's someone who has been a friend for well over 10 years. And I reached out to her just because I knew she has a lot of experiences and a lot of value to bring to the conversation of experiences. I'm talking about none other than Larissa Ross, mother of 3 amazing kids. Well, they're not actually kids, they're young adults now. She's a small business owner, Reese Management Solutions, working on her online presence and actually landed her first major client. She's been a government employee for over a decade, an inspiring writer, and honestly, this intro does her no justice. But if I had to describe her in, I don't know if this is one word or 2 words, but I call her a badass. This conversation is incredible. I can probably listen to this over and over. She brings so much value to the conversation, shares so many incredible experiences about motherhood, creating, and just has an incredible mindset that I think you're really going to enjoy. And honestly, I can go on, but I won't delay. I think the conversation speaks for itself. So enjoy episode 7, our milestone episode number 7 with Larissa Ross. This is a big moment for me on the Expand Your Experiences podcast, because I got a friend that has actually been a friend for over 10 years. She's someone that I have the utmost respect for in so many ways. Uh, Always somebody that I can go and talk to about anything. I mean, we talk about everything from politics to rap to music to art or to parenting. But one of the things that I love the most about my guest is the fact that she is an incredible mother. She's done a lot in her lifetime. She shares a lot of her experiences with me. And I'm very, very grateful to have my friend Larissa Ross on the show.
Thank you for having me. Definitely. It's been a long time coming. We did have some scheduling conflict, but hopefully this is all going to go well. And it's long overdue for us. Very proud of you, Roshan Stevenson, and your podcasting. I'm very proud of you just sticking to your creative side and just plugging away at it. I'm excited to see where this podcast experience goes, not with just you and me, but overall.
No doubt, no doubt. So let's jump right in. And as I was introducing you, I referenced the word mother, and that's kind of where I want to start with you. So I want to read a quote, and then I want you to take it from there. But basically, the quote says, "Mother is a verb. It is something you do, not just who you are." That quote comes from a lady named Dorothy Canfield Fisher. Is there anything specific about that quote that resonates with you?
Well, absolutely. I totally agree. Like you said, we've known each other for a long time. My kids are young adults now. I'll be an empty nester. Actually, as of today, I am an empty nester. So
Is that
yeah,
a congratulations?
uh, it is. It's bittersweet, but we raise our children to be independent. So, you can't melt into a bowl of mush when they are. All three of my children have gone on, two boys, one girl. My daughter is the baby, so it's definitely hard to. It's bittersweet. I won't necessarily say hard, but definitely bittersweet to watch her leave the nest because she is my only girl and she is the youngest. So yeah, both both. I would say congratulations, but it's also like a hint of I'm gonna miss her. Well, all three of them, but definitely my bond with her is something different than you have with your sons.
Hmm.
So as far as the quote goes, I totally agree. Mothers, for me, absolutely is truly an action word, and it's not just for me, but my mother had five girls, and what I saw from all of them, four of us have children. Um, Actually, all five of us have children. My brother is the only one that didn't have a child. But what I saw in my own mother, she's also a twin. So what I saw in both of them, motherhood, mothers, that is an action word. You're constantly moving. I'm by no means a scientist, but a mother for me, what I saw in my own mother just defied the laws of physics, of perpetual motion, of being able to delve within yourself to get that energy, to get that stick to itiveness that you're going to need as a mother. I'm constantly moving, always putting the cares and concerns with my children above myself. That's what I know. That's what I saw, and it's just innate to me. It's just who I am. But absolutely, motherhood, mothers, it is an action word. I totally agree with that. But also, like on the flip side, there is a quote, and I want to be able to get it right. I think I wrote it down, but there is a quote that I wanted to speak of. Not mothers, it's a verb, is an action word, but it's also a noun. And this quote came from Khalil Gibran. I don't want to mispronounce that, but he is talking about motherhood, and his version of it is not necessarily an action word, but it's a descriptive poem on how he felt about his mother. So the way it goes is he's Lebanese and he writes, "The mother is everything. She is our consultation in sorrow, our hope in misery, and our strength in weakness. She is the source of love, mercy, sympathy, and forgiveness." So that is also a quote that I love him as a poet. Um, and that is one that sticks with me from him.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about that is, just you right now mentioned being an empty nester as of today, but
Mhm.
now it's like your role of a mother, it doesn't change, but it shifts. Like it's just your responsibilities as a mother now change a little bit now that they're not there. Because even in the quote that you just mentioned, you talked about consultation or you talked about comfort or whatever the case is. And you got a
Yeah.
daughter who just started college, and there might be some times where, she might need a little bit of consultation, or she might need a little, whatever it is that you have to give. But is it hard to, well, I already asked, was it hard? But, and you probably haven't experienced this yet. And so you might not be able to answer this question, but now, how do you give them the space to grow in terms of, wanting to be there as a mother, but at the
Mhm.
same time allowing them the space to grow as young adults?
Well, that's not something that just started today. It's not, or something that just started when my sons left. It's something that's always been there for me because I'm a single mom, and I understood early on who my children were. And this may sound funny to some, or unbelievable, but honestly, I knew who they were when they came out. I knew who they were when I carried them. And what I would always strive to do is, as you birth your children, you're trying to teach them your language, English, Spanish, whatever that may be. You're trying to teach them your language, and you're trying to grow them up. But the way I looked at that is, I'm learning also. I'm trying to learn their language. I did not give my children pacifiers, neither one of them, because I did not start pacifying behavior. No, well, I'm going to learn to speak to you. You're going to learn to speak to me from birth, from the womb. We're going to figure each other out. And I'm going to learn your language. You're going to learn mine. And it won't be by sticking something in your mouth to stop you from crying. Now, we're going to communicate. And so early on, I knew who my oldest, Gabriel. He came out really fast, sticking. He came out so fast I couldn't hold him. They had him in an incubator, just sticking and moving, just thought he was going to miss something from birth. Gabe is still like that. He's still a runner. He's a people person. He needs that energy, and his metabolism is high. That's never changed. And my middle child, Caleb, he came out slow. He was late. He was a week and a half late. They had to put the forceps on him and the suction cups and everything else to get that boy to come out. And he's still like that. He comes in his own time. He's a learner who's kinetic. He's auditory. He's sensory. He needs everything. You can't give him too much direction all at once, because he takes it one at a time and one move at a time. He's still like that. Same thing with my daughter, Epiphany. And you met her. Well, you met them watching basketball games, but you definitely had your moment with Epiphany. And
Uh,
goodness
uh,
gracious,
yeah.
she came out literally sucking on her fist. Like, she was already hungry. She was already demanding. And she's still like that. She's a very demanding young woman. So what I believed is that from early on, I figured out who they were. And it may take a minute for fathers, because you don't carry them. You don't go through the labor and delivery physically. You're there, hopefully, with your wife or your significant other when they're born. But for me, I wanted to get to know them early, to not change the core of who my children were, because I felt like my job was to figure out what their core was, who they really were as people, and to nurture that. And there are times when, Gabe is running himself ragged, where I need to get him to channel that energy differently, but not necessarily take it away. And with Caleb, there are times, he needs to speed up. Like, you gotta get it moving. But there's a way that I had to learn to speak with him. And with Epiphany, she can't get everything she wants all the time. Now, maybe with her father, but with her mom, yeah, you can't get everything you want all the time exactly when you want it. But I understood that's who they were as people. And it's not my job to take that away. It's my job to nurture and guide who they are to their core, but not to change it.
But where did that come from? I mean, did that come from, what is that something that you also got from your mom, or is that something that, like, how did that type of mindset develop in you?
Well, I won't say that I got it from my mother. I'm a military brat with my dad. I was an only child for a long time, but I was one of six with my mother, but I lived with my father as a child. And I would say it is the opposite, that that's what I did not get. That my father asked what I wanted to play, what instrument I wanted to play. I'm still a tomboy at heart. I was a tomboy then, and I wanted to play the drums. That's not what he wanted to hear in his house all night. So he got me a violin. So I always knew what I enjoyed, and that's just not something that was nurtured by my dad. I knew I was a tomboy. I wanted to play sports. I'm still heavily into sports, whether that's watching them, or I was a referee for a little bit. But I always had that competitive spirit. He never came to any games. He didn't support that side of me. So I knew early on that what that did to me, to not have someone nurture and help grow and develop and guide the core of who I was. So I knew with my children, I didn't want to do them the same. So it was probably the opposite of what you think it is, that's what I had. So that's what I learned and that's what I taught, but it really wasn't, and the thing with not pacifying them, that's really just who I am. I don't pacify behavior regardless of where I am. And I felt like, it's easy to, and I'm not knocking anyone who does, right? But it just wasn't my way. I did not have epidurals with my children. I birthed them all natural births. They were good to mommy, but it is not something that I would want to do again. But yeah, I had all natural births. So we've been doing this. I've been doing this with my kids for a minute. We're going to figure each other out, and what we go through together. And yeah, I can't say that that was something that I was taught in a way that I was shown. I was taught in a way that I was not shown. And that's what I wanted to give to them.
Well, that makes absolute sense, and it especially makes absolute sense to me because I feel that that's how I developed as a parent. I mean, I was raised by my grandmother, as you know, and I mean, I had access to my dad and my dad's family, but I was raised by a single mother as
Hmm.
well, and I used to always think about the things that I wanted as a kid, right? But as I developed as a parent, those are the same reasons. The things that I didn't have are the things that make me a good parent. So it wasn't because I saw them as like you said, I didn't see it as an example per se. I mean, I saw love and I saw my grandma doing the best that she could. But
Right.
other than that, it was just I didn't have it and I wanted to have it and show my kids, be able to bring certain things out of them through my example and through my parenthood because I didn't have it. So I know exactly what you mean
Yep.
by that.
Yep. But sometimes we learn by what we don't see and what we don't have. So, and I think, you and I, like you said, we're cancers and we're wired the same way in a lot of ways.
Right. But at the end of the day, it still requires a certain level of strength, Reese. And I mean, I obviously you're passionate about being a mom
Yeah.
and just you're just a passionate person in general. I won't limit you to just being passionate about being a mom, but since that's what we're talking about,
Yeah.
where would you say that source of strength came from? Just in general, not just through you being a mom, but like you have a core sense of strength. How did you develop that?
You know, I've been asked questions like that several times, being a single mother and, working full time and at one point going back to school. You would have thought by now I had perfected this answer. But honestly, I haven't. I think some of it, like I said, you are who you are, I believe, when you're born, when you're formed in the womb. And some of it, I think this is just the way that I'm written. This is the way I'm scored. And I just have a dogged tenacity to put one foot in front of the other and get on with it. And I feel like pain could be managed. And I don't mean physical pain. I don't mean if you're bleeding out on the sidewalk. What I mean is mental pain and anguish and emotional pain. What I try to do when I'm going through things, whether I'm balled up in the fetal position or just for a moment of frustration, I give life to whatever that feeling is and I let it breathe. And I go through those emotions whether I'm grieving a loss, of something, or whether it's a job or a relationship or anything like that. I give that life. I give validity to that emotion. I let it go through me, and then I put one foot in front of the other, and I get up the next day and move on. And every day it gets a little easier. And I'm not saying I've never. The most excruciating pain would be losing a child, God forbid. I don't know how I would deal with something like that. But what I am saying is pain to a certain degree can be managed. I go into situations with realistic expectations. So if there's something that comes of it that maybe is not maybe the outcome is not what I wanted, I prepare myself mentally for that. I don't like to be so cliche, hey, prepare for the worst, expect the best, or vice versa. I don't get cliche with it. I just go in with realistic expectations and knowing that, hey, it's same, like you said, we equate a lot of things back to motherhood, but I understood to make the choice to not have epidurals or not have some sort of pain medication with my children. Well, I knew it was going to hurt. So when things start to hurt, if that's the outcome of it, whatever it is, I've prepared myself mentally before it gets to that point so that I give validity to those emotions. I give life to those emotions, but I'm at a point where I can recover quickly. Like my recovery for some things just doesn't take as long as it takes maybe the average person.
Well, I mean, shout out to all the cancers. You know what I'm saying? I'm just thinking
Okay.
that, I mean, obviously me being a cancer as well. I mean, of
Mm,
course, when it's two on the show, I got to give us a plug. Um, but something that you said that I want to drill in on a little bit,
mm,
and I don't think this is talked about enough, but you said that when we're born, there's like certain things are written. There are certain things that are,
mm,
you know, innately a part of us and a part of our personalities and so forth. And I also think that that is a key thing to understand as a parent, right? Because
mhm,
a lot of times you hear, parents putting certain pressure on their children due to the fact that to get them to do something that the parent want them to do, as opposed to developing the child's the child's ability to recognize for themselves what that is and develop that.
mhm.
And I think that just comes from a lack of understanding that like every person in this world living is different than every other person that has
Exactly.
lived ever. Like everybody has their own set of circumstances that define who they are.
Right.
So I just think it's interesting that you referenced that from the time that you were born, even to and carrying that over on to your other children being born as well.
Yeah, I chose to figure them out quickly, what their niche was, what their interests were, how they learned, how they moved, what they're comfortable with. And honestly, as strange as it may sound to maybe men who don't carry children and who don't go through the labor and delivery, I know for me, in my experience, my children haven't changed. I saw who they were when they came out, and I can still look into their personalities now and see that's who they still are. So that's when I look at myself as a mother. And yeah, there's no blueprint. I'm sure there are a lot of things I could have done differently. But the one thing that I know that I did was not take the core of who they are away. That's a frustrating experience. There are things as a child I wish I would have been allowed to experience. And I wasn't because my parents weren't accepting of that. So with mine, I can look at them now and I can still see the same babies, like literally when they came out of the womb. They are still the same people. And they don't get it right 100% all the time, but what they are is true to themselves. And that's really all I can ask for. So,
Yeah. I mean, and I think you've done a magnificent job cultivating just that, just allowing them to be true to themselves.
mhm,
So and I think that comes from the thing about you is you're always true to yourself. And I think,
mhm,
just that's just one of your attributes. You're always true to what it is that you believe, what it is that but at the same time, you're open to new ideas. You're open to new
mhm,
perspectives. You know what I'm
mhm.
saying?
You know,
Um,
one thing before we move on, I do want to say this. I really feel like as far as children and parenting is concerned and motherhood, you got to be careful what you call a thing. I always tell my children that you got to be careful what you name something. And I'm not, listen, you name your child whatever you want to name your child, but I name my children with intention. And I knew that, like Gabriel, I thought he was going to be a girl. They told me the whole time he was going to be a girl. I wanted a boy because I had no idea what I was going to do. I can't even cornrow. So I had a boy, and he came out and didn't get a name until we left the hospital because they had told me my whole pregnancy he was a girl. So I named him Gabriel because Sean, you didn't meet me before, Gabe, but you know a lot of what was going on in my life, and I felt like he was, Gabriel was the messenger angel, and I felt like, okay, I thought he was a girl, he's not. So what is this message? Like, what is his birth trying to teach me? So Gabriel, I named him Gabriel because I felt like he was a message, and so with Caleb,
wait. You are
yeah,
not gonna say that he was a messenger and move
yeah.
on to Kino without telling us what the message is.
Hmm.
What was the message? And I mean, that you might have not known at that time, but now Gabriel's an adult. So what was that message, and what was it then, and what is it now? Like what did what was the message, and what did it play out as in your lives?
So as far as, and I hope, I'm still hoping, I get this right, but because parenting never stops. It doesn't stop at 18, it doesn't stop when they're out of the house. I've talked to both of my children, not the middle child, but we've texted today. I've talked to all three of them today. And they're all three out of the house. But for Gabriel, I had a lot of childhood trauma, and I felt like it was time to let that go, and move on to a different stage in my life. I didn't have, when I say I lived with my father, I did. Um, I would say I existed with my father. I'll put it that way. I didn't live with him, but I definitely existed with him. So when I got Gabriel, um, Gabe gave me something to learn and love, because up until then I didn't have that, especially from a man. I'm trying to raise him as a man, and I felt like Gabe's birth brought me a message like, hey, you got to kind of get it together. You got to leave some of this stuff behind, because now you have another responsibility. So he grew me up a lot. Like Gabe's life grew my life, it matured me a lot. Like I cannot be the same person that I am today and it not reflect and it not show in him some sort of way. So I didn't want to, I got to send him out into the world, and I can't send him out into the world with my trauma. I got to move past that. So that's what I did. So, and today Gabe is still, he's still my angel. None of that has really changed. There's sometimes he pops up when I don't even know that I need him. He's popped up at the house sometimes. And one time there was a snake on my porch. I don't use the front door. I use the garage. So I opened the door for him, and he was there battling a snake, and it was just, I didn't even know it was out there. But I moved to a new place, and I was just getting used to the house, and it's near some water. And yeah, there was a snake right on my front porch, and I opened the door, and Gabe was out there battling the snake. And, being a single mom, I have to call for handyman a lot. I'm not handy myself, but he will be here. He'll be the one that will call, and he'll be the one that's here. So it doesn't appear that I'm alone. So there was one time where I was alone, and I was feeling kind of creeped out, by this handyman that was sent by the home warranty company. And next thing I know, Gabe was coming in the door. He has the code to get in the door. Gabe was walking in the door, and he looked at me. He said, "Who is that?" And I said, "That's the handyman." He was like, "Why didn't you tell me he was here?" So Gabe shows up as my message, as my angel. He still does that. When I don't call, he's still there. For Caleb's name, his first name meant faithful, is in Caleb. His middle name, I named him Joaquin, and that meant God will establish. So I wanted for him, something different. He's not Gabe. They don't have the same father. So I wanted Caleb's life to represent the faith that I had in God, to bring me out of a lot of tough situations, because you came in my life shortly, after that. Um, and I wanted help, to raise a man. Gabe's father's not in my life like that. So I was like, look, I got another little man to raise. His dad is here. But as a woman, I have a role also. So help me to establish this child. And so that was a big deal for me. So with Epiphany, I didn't plan on having her. And I kind of was like, Lord, what do you want me to do? My relationship is not good. I've never been married. I'm still with their dad, but we're not married. So what is it you want me to do? You're trusting me to raise a woman? So I wanted a biblical name for her, like I had with the boys. And no disrespect to anybody out there who may be listening, the Sarahs and the Ruths didn't resonate with me. So I kept praying about it, and the word epiphany kept coming up. And when I looked at it, it said, epiphany was a sudden realization or manifestation. And at the point I had her, I had not planned on having any more children, but I had grown up a lot. And I felt like, okay, he's trusting me to raise this little girl. I got to get her name right. So I did. She was my epiphany. She was my, hey, you're coming into this thing now, like you're figuring this whole motherhood thing out. But I wanted for each of my children, anytime I called their names, and I say you got to be careful what you call a thing. I wanted every time I spoke their names to be speaking that which I called them into their lives. I wanted it when I say Gabriel, every time I call your name, I'm speaking, you got a message for this world. You are a message to this world. Understand that, have something to live up to. And with Caleb, we call him Keno, based off the name Joaquin. And that stuck with me. And I wanted him to know that, hey, you got somebody out there, you're going to get established quick. You got somebody to help you build. You are someone that can build. And Gabe is out on his own. He's a great people person. He's got his own business. And Caleb, he's 21, but he'll be flying in next week to close on his first home. I wasn't a homeowner till I was in my 30s, till I was maybe even early 40s. So with him, to be getting himself established at 21, and it's actually going to turn out to be an investment property. I know I named him right. Joaquin, like God will establish. He's being established. And Epiphany, she's kind of very independent with her name, meaning manifestation. She gets things quick. She figured out what she wanted to do a long time ago and who she wanted to be a long time ago. So she is just, she came into my life when I thought I had it kind of figured out with this motherhood thing. And right now, I just need to speak that manifestation of who my children are. Definitely her being a woman into her life. Every time I call her name, and generally speaking, I don't call her by a nickname. I want to speak into their lives what I call them.
Well, all that's profound, and thank you so much for sharing that. But going back to one of the original things that you said that I feel that people may take for granted, which is doing things with intention.
Yes.
It's just doing things in general with intention. I mean, naming your children with intention, having talks with intention, whatever it is when you do it with intention, it doesn't always have to be, and it might not always be clean or it might not always be perfect, but when it's done with intention, I feel like people resonate more with things that are intentional, regardless of what it is. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I think it comes across as perhaps a little more genuine.
Yes.
When you do things on purpose and with purpose, that it gives you a feeling of accomplishment. When you set out to do something and you see it manifesting itself, it gives you, would give me a feeling of accomplishment, but also for those around you that say, hey, you know what? This is what they set out to do, and this is what's done. And it leads to like a different respect for someone, I believe.
Mm. So I mentioned, people not taking or setting intentions or having intentions when they do things. And that's one of the things that's the top of my mind in terms of something that people take for granted. What's something else that you think people take for granted?
Time, and the short answer, I mean, that's an easy one. Time. And like I said, I don't want to be so cliche when you know that tomorrow isn't promised. It's not. And it's not only tomorrow isn't promised, the next minute isn't promised. So, whether that's time that you spend with your loved ones, time to pursue a career, time to start a business, or time to write a book, or even just time to ourselves to just be. I think for the most part, what a lot of people take for granted is time, and that it'll be there for you tomorrow, whatever that is, whatever that moment is. Yeah, for the most part, time.
So you're also a writer. And for everybody listening, I mean, you probably could already tell that just based on her answers and her storytelling and her descriptive nature. I find, well, let me ask you this. Let's start here.
Okay.
How long have you been writing?
Um, as far back as I can remember, even because as I said, I lived with my mother for a while, but I went to live with my dad there. I was an only child, so I did not have I went from being one of six to one of one. So writing was my escape. Just writing my emotions down of being the one sent away, or not having siblings in the house anymore. Those, your cousins and your siblings usually are your first best friends. And I didn't have that. So from as far back as I can remember, and I went to live with him maybe around 6, 7 years old, I've always written. And writing for me is, Uh, and Sean, you and I have talked about this a lot. It's the source of some pride, but it's also the source of frustration a lot of times in not having achieved what I wanted to as far as writing is concerned just yet. And hopefully with this new chapter starting in my life, I can give a little more time to, that is what I'm passionate about. And a lot of times when people say passion and being passionate about something, we think of the romance of it. We think of the love, but passion really is a willingness to suffer, and that's really what passion is. So when you say I'm passionate about writing and I have a passion for it, that's perfect. Not necessarily because of the love part and the pretty part and, the heart's all the flutter part, but it's the willingness to suffer for it. And writing to me, um, at this point in my life and a lot of points in my life, it has been, moments of suffrage. If I'm writing something, whether it be a screenplay or a book or starting a blog, the fact that I haven't completed things yet, it is a great source of pain. And I know that if I don't achieve a certain level of success, and I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about completion with a work maybe, that I will always be unfulfilled because there are places in me that no one and nothing can touch except for words, except for the written word. So.
I mean, well, I just actually made a connection because earlier you were talking about like giving power, like, what you call something, is like giving it
Hmm.
power. Well, essentially writing is just a combination of that. I mean, it's just using words to describe something or tell something or whatever the case is. Like, how do you, other than the pain that or experiences that you write about, how do you develop your concepts?
Um, I would say the concepts develop themselves. Like they come to me sometimes in a passing conversation. Sometimes a concept can come to me on a billboard. I can hear a word because the study of words, etymology, like that is something that's also near and dear to my heart. I'm curious in how words have come to be and the meaning behind them, So the concepts will come to me in different ways. Sometimes it's just a word I see on the billboard, or there's a person that happens by me that crosses my path, or I've worked at the in airport environments, and that the airport is full of emotion. It's people that's happy, because they're going off on a vacation, or happy because someone's coming in, and people that are sad for the same reasons. They're flying away or they're coming in, and I'll sit there and I'll people watch. And a lot of times the concepts reveal themselves, and my job is to develop them and see where they want to go. And so a lot of times I'm not sitting here thinking, what do I want to write about? It doesn't come like that. It comes and it's almost like something clicks. And there are plenty of times I'll be walking around or just driving, and a lot of times I drive in silence. Something comes to me, and moving on to the next thing. But there's so many messages that I text to myself so that I don't forget it later. And sometimes when I scroll back through the text messages I have texted myself in these moments, I don't even remember writing the concept down. I don't even remember having that thought. So when it comes to you, you got to get it out on paper real quick. And paper these days in 2022, a lot of times it's text messaging, but I'm an old school person. I don't like the nooks. I like books. I like to be able to open them and smell them. And same thing, I like to scribble something down, but it's just not always available to me. So the concepts, honestly, is not where I sit there and I think about it. They come to me in song or in sound, or they come to me, like I said, on a billboard on the side of the road, or an emotion I see in a person, and they just kind of reveal themselves to me rather than me chasing them.
Is there anything recently that has revealed itself to you that you've been toying around with in your brain?
Um, there's a project I'm working on that it was my first completed script, and I'm toying around with that one because I've never completed a full length movie feature before. Um, I'm toying around with that one. Nothing I want to reveal at the moment, because I think it's a rather unique idea with
Well,
you.
go
I
well
talked
well
about.
go back then. Go back
Mhm,
past the one. Go back
mhm.
past that one. Then give me one before that
Let me
that you
check.
can reveal, and you'll come
Um,
back on the show to reveal the new one when it's ready. How about that?
Yeah, I will. Okay, so there's one that's also near and dear to my heart. I can reveal this one, and it might be what you're getting at. So you should just ask me, Roshan, if that's what you want to do. But I know these are podcasts, and so maybe I'm not seen, but I'm a rather curvy woman, and some of that came with having my children. But I have gotten to a place where I accept those, the curves, full hips and buttocks and breasts and all of that, and I'm comfortable in my own skin. So there was a project I was working on, where I wanted women who are shaped like me, to feel comfortable in their own skin. Um, when you're a full figured voluptuous woman, a lot of times you get objectified. You see yourself projected a certain way in videos or in song. And I wanted for women like me to, I wanted a place where they could come together for a commonality, for someone that understood. And so you guys know by now I'm a word person. So I wanted to think of a blog name or a business name, a book, something I could write that women could identify with. So I looked up, if I can't find the right word, I'll go to a different language because it's always, maybe I can't find it in English. And so what I did was look up the word body, and I looked it up in different languages. And the one word that came up is in an African language. It was called Jiki. And I was like, okay, that's cute. That's got a little ring to it, but I need something else. I wanted something to where women who are shaped like me to know it's okay to be, a full figured woman where it'd be pretty. So I looked up pretty in other languages, and in the Haitian Creole language, Jiki was Hausa for body, which is African. The Haitian Creole language the word was belle for pretty. So I put those two together, and I came up with Jiki Bell. And so that is, a blog that I'm working on. I'm still a little ways away. Hopefully now in this new season of my life, I'll be able to drill down on that. But Jiki Bell is a word I came up with to describe a woman's body, but also in a very positive light. And I'm not saying that anyone who isn't full figured that they don't have the same struggles. I can just speak from my experience with my body, and it's not to discount anyone else's experience with theirs. So that is a project that's near and dear to my heart. The hope is down the line I'll be able to, the pandemic kind of threw things off a little bit. I wanted to do conferences and, have men and women up, speaking and encouraging and just have empowerment conferences and meetings, and I'm hoping to build on that a little bit, body positivity and just being comfortable who you are, whether that's a curvy woman or whatever that is. I can just speak from my experience, and I've always had a little meat on my bones. I got a little bit more than I'm used to, but I accept that. So that is a project that is near and dear to my heart. That maybe that's where you were driving at. I don't know,
Well,
but
I
it's
wasn't driving, but
okay.
but I mean, I was just curious because I know one thing about you, you always do have different ideas and different creative things. So I was just curious as about, and I know that's how a lot of times that I create. I can be, on a run and just something will hit me and I just got to stop my run and like
Hmm.
and make a note instantly about whatever it is, and it
Yeah.
may not even be nothing at the time, but later on it'll be something that goes with another piece. It's almost like a puzzle piece. So I was just curious as to your process basically, and what recently came about. I know the Jiki Bell one was something near and dear to you, which I had a whole separate question for that.
Yeah.
But there is one thing that I want you to define for me. Body positivity. I know that I know that has a certain meaning based on the media, but with you having a project like that and it be so near and dear to you, how would you define it?
It's just being comfortable in your own skin, accepting who you are. Not all of us are meant to be a size 2 or a size 20. It's really just being comfortable in your own skin, carrying that confidence with you that this is who I am, this is who I present to the world. And being comfortable just looking at yourself in the mirror, without anyone else around. When you wake up in the morning, being comfortable with who that person is. And then if you're not, doing what you can to change it. But every stage in that change, every stage in growth, or if you're trying to lose weight, being um, positive, confident, and actually just accepting yourself for who you are, whatever shape you are. Because women, there's a sign out there, a road sign is, and and I think when I was writing the blog or starting to, there was going to be a topic, a little button that said dangerous curves ahead. And that was to speak to the women who go out. And it's not just women, I won't even say that, but women who are literally dying to have the shape that they want, whether it's anorexia and you're starving yourself, or whether you're going to other countries and getting procedures to enhance your buttocks or your breast implants. And so I wanted that so when you were talking about how concepts come to me, that would be one where I see a road sign that says dangerous curve, because I'm always driving, always going somewhere through the mountains. When I saw that, it related to me a concept, that I could use for the blog, because people are women are out there trying to develop these curves, butt implants and injections and things like that are killing them. So what I wanted to do was speak to the woman for whoever she is. It doesn't have to be voluptuous, but with body positivity, you're comfortable in who you are. And at least, and if you're not dying literally to get there. So,
I mean, it's easy to say, be comfortable who you are,
mhm,
and accept your body or whatever the case is. But
mhm.
what are some practical things that people can do that you think would help people in terms of being able to accept themselves for who they are?
Well, some of it you have to get from within, because just like happiness, there are certain things you got to get from within that nothing external can give you. So the first thing you have to do is to get yourself right inside, because there's nothing that the outside world is going to give you if you're not happy in a lot of things, not just in your body and the way you look. From the inside, you got to get that inside woman together or that inside man together, before anything external can help you. So the first thing I would say is figure out a way, and that's going to be different for everybody, to come to terms with who you are. Because once you're accepting of who you are on the inside, you'll be more accepting of who you are on the outside, whatever size that is. I've been all sizes. I was a lot smaller when I had my oldest son, of course, but as I had three children and as I aged and different things like that, as I switched jobs, I went from a UPS driver where I'm active and moving around to, more of a stationary position to where you're going to have weight gain and things like that, whether it's a medical condition. For the most part, you got to get right with who you are on the inside, because a lot of things manifest themselves on the outside, and it's really not an outward problem, it's an inward problem. So you got to start there. And however that looks to you, because I can't speak to different things everybody is going through. It'd be impossible for me to say, do this one thing and that's going to help. Other than getting yourself right internally, it would be so many different avenues that different women need to take to get there. But that for me is number one. Two, I look at myself every day, and I walk around my house naked all day long, and I can see things that I would love to change. And if I get to the point where they're changed, cool. But if I don't, I'm gonna still walk around my house with no clothes on every day, passing whatever mirror, and it's not going to break me down. I have to know, like, make a decision. If it's not something you're comfortable with, if it's something you want to change, loss or gain or muscle tone or whatever it is, or better skin complexion, if it's not something that you're comfortable with, then change it. And if you are, then live in that truth, and walk by the mirror without breaking down, and go outside without covering up. I'm not one to where I am a curvy woman, but I don't have to go out and flaunt those things, because you got to be careful what you're attracting, what you're putting out there. Because sometimes those external, the way you're viewed by others can affect who you are if you allow it to on the inside. So just kind of be careful how you present yourself so that you can keep building the right kind of confidence, because you don't want it all to come from the outside. For me, I'm good with who I am on the inside. Can I always grow and develop and change? Of course. But for the most part, at my age, I think I'm who I'm going to be, and I'm accepting of that. So the outward appearance, I don't get consumed by it.
Okay. Well, I mean, very practical steps. I think, I mean, especially the first point of just fixing, not necessarily fixing, but taking the responsibility yourself for it to for your own self, as opposed to looking for outside sources. And I'm not saying that, sometimes you don't need an outside source, but at the
Right.
end of the day, you don't know what outside source you need unless you've actually done a real deep dive
Hmm.
internal inventory on what it is that you need. And I often refer to, um like, if you go to Google and you ask Google a question, right? If
Hmm.
you don't ask the right question, the results that come up could be completely off from what it is that you are looking for. So that
Right.
means that you got to know exactly what it is that you're looking for so you can know to ask the right questions. And sometimes that right question is it's something that we can answer ourselves. And if you are going to seek help, you are at least asking or seeking help by asking for the right advice or seeking help from the right resource, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep, I totally agree with that. The resources is key. You got to be careful what and who you let speak into your life. So I always tell my kids, and you know, I've been a manager of people for a while. You got to consider the source, and you got to consider the resource. You got to consider where you choose to feed, you know, and what you choose to let feed you.
If I had a button to make a noise from that quote, I would have pushed it right there, but I don't quite got that yet. but
Mhm.
slightly shifting gears,
Yeah.
I did want to know, um, in terms of, we talked about, a little bit about comfort and discomfort and pain, but when would you say was the last time that you pushed past your comfort zone?
Well, actually, I do have well, I won't call it a project, but I volunteered and I do volunteer work on a regular basis. I love giving back, and that kind of work is very rewarding for me. So I know we talked a lot about writing and about motherhood, but in my professional life, you know, I work for the federal government like you, and I will be pushing past. You know, a boundary and delving out into. I have volunteered to go on to work with another government agency to deploy to help the migrant situation down in at the southwest border. So at this point, I don't know where I'm going or when I'm going this month or how I'm going to get there. I don't even know exactly what I'm going to be doing, but like we said, I'm an empty nester, you know. So there's some things now that I can do that I wasn't able to do, and I'm not even quite sure what I'll be doing, but I'm willing to take that chance, you know, to see where I can be of service to someone else. And I don't know what kind of boundary I'll be pushing. I don't know what kind of work exactly I'll be doing, but I'm willing to get that experience to kind of go out into the unknown, you know, a little bit to be able to give back to someone else and to give back to um, people less fortunate than I am, possibly. So yeah, that's coming up in a couple weeks, and so that would probably be the closest I can come to pushing past a boundary, because I kind of been home and to my own children and nurturing to them primarily because they've just had me. But for to be able to give to a whole other country, a whole other world, um, is a boundary that I haven't crossed yet, you know, for myself.
I mean, would you also say the boundary, another boundary is the fact that you don't know, is the fact of the
Hmm.
unknown?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's it mostly because I keep waiting on an email, you know, to see maybe they're going to tell me something, you know, maybe I'm going to hear something about exactly what I'll be doing or how I'm getting there. But yeah, I haven't heard that. And I'm, you know, I'm comfortable with that because like you said, I'll sit down and as a cancer, I sit and it doesn't take me long to pick up on something. Like you said, we don't need a lot of information, but I need something, you know, to go off of. But this situation, yeah, I don't have any information, you know, and I'm open for that experience, you know, to just be of service to someone wherever they need me, whether that be the other agency, but primarily for others coming from different countries that are less fortunate. I'm not here to judge whether migrants, immigrants, or anything should be in this country because really we're a country of immigrants. So it's not for me to judge that type of situation. I'm not trying to get political here. I'm just trying to do some things I haven't done before with very limited information. So yes, I'm kind of geeked about it, fairly excited about doing it. So that's probably the most recent boundary that I'm pushing. Boundaries, literally, geographically and otherwise.
Well, after that experience, I want to definitely chat and just kind of get, just, what was it like? What were things that you learned? What were things that you saw in your whole experience with that? Speaking of that, and you recently, had a birthday and you
Uh-huh.
went to Arizona.
I did.
And
Um,
you took a sunrise helicopter ride, correct?
I didn't. We didn't do the helicopter ride because, for one, I was going to the Grand Canyon and they were battling a lot of wildfires. Like it seemed like every time we turned a corner, they were battling, and they battle high. Like the trees up there in the mountains, they were battling a lot of wildfires. So it was a lot of not only was it the smoke, but it was just a very overcast day. So we weren't getting the sun. It was going to be sunset. We weren't getting that like we wanted to. Excuse me, I went with my mother, but we still went anyway. But we were just unable to get the sunset like we wanted to. But you make do and you push through it. But yeah, I recently had a birthday, and I wanted to celebrate that with my vessel. With the one that brought me here. So yeah, we tried, didn't quite get it. We may have to go back for that. But yeah.
I know you also you had some experience that weekend when went through some of the places that you went to get to the Grand Canyon.
hmm
What were some of those experiences?
Well, for one, the Grand Canyon is like it says, it's grand. So you're only going to get, but so close. So we stayed in a little area called Flagstaff, and we drove. The direction we took, we were going to the South Rim, and we had to go through a Native American reservation. And I'm not touristy, I know it sounds real touristy, but because I turned the big 50 this year, once a month, I'm going to celebrate every month and go somewhere I haven't been, somewhere that's maybe a national landmark or maybe even something smaller than that. But so I chose the Grand Canyon and I wanted to be with my mother as I came into this world 50 years ago, with that experience. So we had to drive through a Navajo Native American reservation. And, it was very eye-opening. I had stopped along before we even went out there. There was a Navajo, almost like a flea market. And we had purchased some items, and I got some things for my children, some stones and jewelry for my daughter. And I talked with them a lot about their experience of being Native, and being in this country where essentially was their land, but you're kind of you're given this barren land to just survive on, when the amenities aren't as great, when the beauty is not there. When you go from Sedona, Arizona, through, I believe it was called Cameron, which is where the Native American, the Navajos were. It's just a totally different world out there. So I stood and I talked to them for a long time. There was one young man sold me some jewelry. He said his mother made it. And I said, well, what's her name? Because, I'm big on names. And he says, Denise. And I said, well, it can't be, like she's Native American. Like, what is her real name? He said, well, her name is Dinesh, but we call her Denise. That's the closest thing to English that we can get. So I said, well, what's your name? And I think he said his name wasn't Jonathan, but it was Justin maybe. And I said, but it can't be, because I see him like he's speaking the language to everyone that's at the market. And he says, well, I said, but what's your Navajo name? And he says, well, I have to earn it. And I thought that was just so profound, that and he was every bit of my son's age. And I'm big on names, as you guys know now, but I thought that was just so profound that he did have an American name, but that he hasn't earned his Navajo name yet. And I just loved that story, because it just kind of resonated with me a little bit, because as I said, you got to be careful what you call a thing. And that's your dog, your children, whatever it is. So it seemed to be the same way with that culture. Like, he hasn't been named yet in that, even though he's every bit a young man, every bit of early 20s. He doesn't have his Navajo name yet. He has to earn it. It will be something that's fitting of him. So I love that experience probably more than I love seeing the Grand Canyon, quite honestly, because I love to learn, and I love to figure out how people tick in different cultures. I'm not into the touristy stuff so much. I'm saying Grand Canyon, but I'm into the journey along the way, probably more so than the destination.
Mm.
And I took a lot of pictures throughout the Indian reservation. I probably took as many as I took of the Grand Canyon. And so, yeah, my experience getting there was just as rewarding as seeing the canyon itself. And I'll tell you a quick story, because I did go to Sedona. We did glass blowing. My mother's very crafty. And I saw a man I don't know a lot about these vortexes, these energy vortexes, but we were told stories about it, because like I said, I like to get into the spirit of a place. So I'll take a trolley and I want to go around and I want to hear more about this place wherever I am. And there was a man that climbs up to, I think it's a Boynton Boynton, Boynton Gorge or something like that. But he climbs up this mountain every day. We pull over on the side of the road in the trolley because he every day he climbs up, you see his arms are outstretched and he's praying or singing or whatever he's doing. But then he sits down and the trolley driver pulls over and turns off the engine of the trolley. And he says, let's see if he's serenading us today. And the man's back is to us, he plays this flute and it is just reverberating off all these mountains. And we just sat there, in that moment and listened to this man play this flute at the top of this mountain. And, I'm telling you all these stories and I'm not really hitting on the Grand Canyon as much because I felt along the way these different people and their experience and what makes them click and what they do on a daily basis and how they survive. I just got more value out of that. It was more rewarding than seeing the canyon itself.
Yeah. So with the whole thing, so the guy climbs the mountain every day just to play the flute so it can reverberate the sound off the
I
surrounding
don't
mountains.
Yeah, I don't think he's doing it just to play the flute. I think because when we first saw him, he was standing way at the top of this mountain and his arms were outstretched and his back was to us. So I don't know, he could have been praying, or he could have been sucking up that the energy that's in that place because they're bright red mountains. And the way Sedona is, you cannot build anything larger than 2 stories, not your business, not your house, nothing. And you can only choose between, I think it's 6 different colors and they're Navajo colors. They're brick red, they're turquoise, um, beige, green, the tan colors. You can only choose between 6 colors, whatever you're building. So I don't know if he's climbing up there just to play the flute, but I know that's part of the ritual that he does. But honestly, you could just sit there in silence and take in the beauty of that place because they have it as such that you can't build and take away, like build whatever you want, but you can't take away our view. And quick story about that also. So I got to tell you this. So the trolley guy told me this story, and I loved it. But because I love a rebel anyway, anything with a rebel spirit, I love. But McDonald's, Sedona it's eclectic, but they got some money out there. And when I tell you they don't allow you to put anything more than 2 stories up, they don't. So McDonald's, they allow McDonald's out there wants to erect, they have the long the poles with the arches, the golden arches at the top. That's their thing. So they're building out in Sedona. They get ready to erect, this pole and their signage. And Sedona says no. So McDonald's takes them to court, right? They take them to court and says, yeah, you're infringing on us. That's our thing. That's our logo. That's this. That's what we're known for. And McDonald's took them to court and lost.
Mm.
So when you go out to that one, I'll have to send you a picture, Sean, probably text you. But when you go out to that McDonald's, I had to take a picture of it. They lost. And because McDonald's took Sedona to court and lost that battle, not only could they not erect this huge golden arch signage, they can't even have golden arches out there. They forced them to change it to teal. So that
What?
McDonald's out there is like their arches aren't golden. They are teal. And it's pretty. Like I loved it. So yeah, it was just an educational trip for me on a lot of levels, whether it's the natives of the land to the way the city flows and what they allow and what they don't, and then what other people are taking or giving back, whether that's sound, to those mountains or prayer or whatever he was doing. So I just really thoroughly, it was a nice kickoff to my 50th year.
Oh yeah. I mean, and now and I was hoping that you got into all those stories because it's
Mhm.
insane how, just the willingness to travel, the willingness to do something like that. And I think like you said, it goes back to, doing something with intention. Your intention was just to kind of go out there and experience it all, and that's exactly what you did. The Grand Canyon is cool, but you maybe mentioned the Grand Canyon once or twice, but it was all
Right.
those other things, all those other experiences, all those other people that you talk to, all those other things that you learn about the culture that actually made the trip enriching for you. So much so that it was a kickoff to all the things that you're now like embarking on in your life.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. It was a good start, and that's what I wanted. Um, and I wanted to share those things with my mother, with the woman who brought me into this world, and to have that experience with her. And it's something that she had never seen, so she could knock something off her bucket list. But absolutely. And my intention is always learn, and whatever way that comes to me, whether it is a native or whether it is a transplant, from another city, state, or country, but finds beauty in this place and gives a song, or whether it's a story about fighting, about battling for what you learn, what what you love. And if the city of Sedona is like, no, you can build what you want, but you won't obstruct the beauty of this place, and didn't allow it. I love a good fight like that. So absolutely, it was an amazing kickoff to this year, and going into this month, where the very next month after I experienced that, I'm experiencing something completely different, migrants and the rush of people trying to get to this country to experience some of the things that I, maybe some of us take for granted. And I'll probably have more stories for you, of I want to learn those plights. I don't just want to go, we'll be making medicine runs, I'm sure, supply runs, things like that. But I also want to get into how, Sean, you and I both do this, of how people think, what makes them tick, what'll make you take a journey like that. It's perilous and risk it all. So yeah, I'm excited to go to be able to give back, but I'm more excited for what I'll get. And that has nothing to do with financial, with money, is what I'll get back from the people I'm going to give to. So,
And I think that's beautiful, and I'm really excited to hear what that is, and every other journey that you take after that,
yeah,
because I know if you've set your mind to doing that, and now that you have the flexibility to do that, I'm sure it's going
yes.
to be exciting for you. But I really, 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 really appreciate you taking the time, A, to share these stories, B, to come on here and just, be a guest and share some experiences with me and everyone else listening.
So right now, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. It's been nice. Like Sean, you and I have been friends a long time, but we don't talk as often as we should. So it's been nice to kind of catch up and share some of these things with you. And I'm just, we were talking earlier, even though I've known you a long time, I was still super nervous to have this conversation with you. We don't talk on this level. We're kind of just shooting the breeze and shooting the text here or there. We're in different time zones, like you're across the country, you're across the world, and hopefully I'll get over there too. And I'm excited to be able to get there to see you and what we'll do over there together.
Okay. Well, I do have a couple other questions for
Mhm.
you. One is, what is something you think everyone should experience?
Um, that's a good question. I don't want to be cliche. I don't want to do the love thing. That's a good question, Sean. I got to think about that one. I got to come back to that one. What's your next question?
The next question is, what's in time frame or an era, or any time in history, anything in history that you could experience that you weren't around for? What is something that you would have wanted to have experienced?
There, like I said before, there's always, when I go someplace, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but I'm always trying to get into what that place is and where it's been and what it's done. And in my travels with the job, I came upon this place where it felt very oppressive to me, right? And I couldn't understand it, but I knew I visited the place before because of the job, and I had to go back for like 6 weeks. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to go home. I'm going to stay in this place the whole time because I can't give it this kind of power over me. Why am I so uncomfortable in this space? Because the place is gorgeous, And so I start researching before I left things that I could do there because I wasn't going to come home on the weekend. So I was like, I got to have something to do after class, after training. And there's this place came up that I had never heard of before, and it's called Igbo Landing. So the Igbo is they come from what is now modern day Nigeria and Africa. So they would be like modern day Nigerians. So the Igbo ran aground. They were captured and on a ship, and the ship ran aground. And I'm trying to cut out a lot of the story so it won't be so long. The ship didn't run aground on its own, though. When they were captured, the Igbo king was captured. And when they understood that, hey, we're going here to be slaves, they overthrew the captain. They overthrew everybody on the boat. The boat runs aground in this area, not far from here in Georgia. And they get out of that boat and they're chanting in their Igbo language, the water brought us, the water will take us home. And so they walk off the boat and all walk into the water and perish. And that is described as what was the first slavery revolt and also mass suicide. And I had never heard of that, So when I was like, oh, I gotta go to this place. I gotta experience it. So for 3 weekends in a row, I looked for this place and I couldn't find it. And so I took a trolley. That's what I do. And so when I get on the trolley, I asked the man, I was like, I want to go to this place, Ebo Landing. He says, I know what you're looking for. Let me get my narrator. She gets on board the bus. She comes to me and she was like, listen, I'm just telling you now, there's no marker for that area. And I was like, but it's got to be. You have plantations out here. You have other historical markers out here. You got to have a marker. There's some place I can go. And she says, well, no, but what I'll do is I'm narrating. I'm going to say something and you'll know this is where it is because we'll go near there over a bridge. I said, okay. So she did. She gave me a little cue that this is what you're looking for. So when we got off, she says, look, there's, an old historical African-American school. If you go find this one particular woman, she's the only one they allow on that property. So I go find her on the next weekend and she's like, oh, they only do tours. She'll only go out on a Wednesday. I was like, I got one more weekend here. I need her. And so she did. She met me, loaded me up in her car, and she took me out. And as we're pulling up on the place, it's called Ebo Landing. There's a carload full of women, and they're looking lost just like I was. She said, oh, I know what they want. We pull up on them. She says, hey, I know what you guys want, what you ladies want. Come with me. So the property now, there are a few houses that sit on it. And it's now a marsh. It's not this big sound anymore like it was before. And we all stood there and held hands and we prayed and we talked about this place and listened to the story behind it. And I won't go too far into it, but you can look it up. Ebo is spelled EGBO, like the G is silent, but you can look up Ebo Landing and go. And when you ask, like, if there was a time period or place that I would like to go back to, it's not that I want to go back and experience slavery, but I would love to go back and see that type of strength. As I was going through, when I drive through that area, even though the roads are paved now, and they're houses, if you're in tune with who you are, you can feel your ancestors there. And speaking of that, the woman that took us there, she, we're supposed to be on like a little 30-minute take me out to this landing. I ended up staying with her for 4 hours and riding all around this island. And we went to her family plot. And to get there now, it was on a plantation. And it's funny because she says, yeah, if you can trace your roots back to living on a plantation, of your ancestors being slaves on a plantation, you can be buried there. And I'm here like, but why would you want to be, And she says, let me take you. So we go to her family plot, right? It's now a golf course. So even though her family cemetery is back there, she has to be waved in and they know her, they wave us in like, hey, come on through. Miss Amy, they knew who she was. And we go back there and I'm looking. So the cemetery is back by, they built a caddy shack there. So they're broken down golf carts and caddies back there smoking and joking. And you see the cemetery is small. It's got a fence and a tarp around the interior of the fence. And we walk over there and I'm looking at these, I can't even call them headstones. They're just markers because they dated back to like the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And they have beautiful names. Like there was one slave woman whose name was Holland. And I'm like, wow, I just never thought about it like that. And they just had these odd, unusual, beautiful names. And she says, well, when I die, I'm going to be buried here. And I'm like, but why would you want to be? And she says, well, this is where my roots are. And I want to be buried with them. So she said, there's everybody that's buried here except for my brother, because he said he didn't want golf balls hitting him in the forehead when he's dead. So he's the only one that's not buried there. And I watched her stand there and I just wonder, what I love trees and I wonder like what stories they had to tell. And of course, I don't want to be enslaved. I don't want that bondage. But from a bird's eye view, like it would have just been amazing to see that sort of resilience and strength in my people, and in a people, period. So I don't want to go back to the time period necessarily to experience that. I'm not saying that, but to see that kind of strength and to have been at this place that for weeks I just felt tormented. So now I have an affinity for it, And I'll tell you another quick story. There are two islands out there and they're side by side. I grew up with my father. So as a young child, we'd always go to my grandmother's house. She passed on, but I went to visit my grandfather a couple years ago. And I had passed down this hallway many a times leading to their room. Last year, I look on the wall and there's a drawing of that island. And so now I'm wondering what my grandmother's connection was to it. Like, what would she have been doing here? And I never took advantage of her knowledge, and now I'll never know. But she also had been on that island. So I'm like, well, maybe I always felt a kinship or there was something that was always pulling me to it. So I'd love to just have a bird's eye view of what my grandmother was doing there and what she endured. And she was a domestic worker, and how her life was. But also, with Miss Amy taking me around. Yeah, if you ask me about a time period, for that, I love the 20s and I'm an old soul. But for the most part, I would love to see that kind of strength in a people.
Yeah. Well, I got some homework to do because I want to. That place sounds interesting, and just to kind of know because I've never heard of it, so I am gonna see if I can get some research. Yeah, you never know, Reese. Like you might even have some type of connection to it yourself, especially like you said, your grandma had that like drawing or painting or whatever it was. Like you never know, and like you said, you probably won't know now.
Yeah, you can easily Google that. Like I said, it's spelled IGBO. Landing, and from what I understand, the Smithsonian wants to excavate because there were talks that it was just a myth. Oh, you know what? If you saw the first Black Panther, you remember when they were fighting at the end, and he says the antagonist character, and I speak in writer's terms, but he speaks of not wanting to be in bondage. And he says, throw me into the water. Remember that scene? I don't have the verbiage. I don't have the dialogue exactly right. Yeah. He said where that's who he's talking about. He's talking about what happened there, where he says his ancestors knew that death was better than bondage. He is talking about that right there. So you'll be able to find it if you Google that. There was a lot of talk that it was a myth. But now it is taught in the school system that that's something that happened. But I do know that there's no marker out there. You can't just go. It's private property. It's just a few houses on it. But hopefully it'd be nice one day if the Smithsonian could excavate and, see if they could find any bones, of humans. And they do say sometimes you can hear shackles out there at night. I've never been out there at night. I'm not going out there at night, but the place is very interesting. So yeah, we can talk more about it offline.
Yeah. Well, so we skipped one question. We back at that question.
Oh, what? What I think everyone should experience?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to narrow that down to one thing. And I don't want to sound too deep or something unimaginable, but
just say what comes to your mind.
It's not going to be a place or anything like that. I think something that everyone should experience is self-value and know what their worth is to this world, and know what they're here to give and purpose. Because I think a lot of us miss that. There's a line in a song that says, "Not everybody dies, but not everybody lives." And I think it's a rap song, but I love that line, and I feel like we miss our purpose a lot and are left unfulfilled. And that causes a lot of struggle in people. So if I can think of one thing that I think everyone should experience, is their life's purpose.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate you again for everything, for being a friend, being putting up with me for over 10 years, coming on the show, all that stuff. So thank you so much for being a guest.
Well, thank you for having me.